Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith. At the table, we have Tim Ross, tennis coach from Philadelphia, and he's headed to work for Jim Klein up in Doylestown. He's going to spend the week with us, so welcome, Tim.
Thanks very much, Steve.
And then from Germany, we've got Andy Fitzell, and then we've got Norm, our co-host. He's been on the show so many times now, I've got to give him the title co-host. Co-host with the most, Dave Anderson. But let's talk about the run that your players had. Let's focus on that during this podcast. Tell us about your players, Andy, and Tim and Dave, and I can ask some questions.
Yeah, JJ Tracy, Robert Cash. I worked with JJ in the fall of 2022, I believe it was. I went in and did kind of a whole work on his game, but especially his serve. And then worked through video and whatnot. And then just shortly before Wimbledon this year, they asked me if I would come over there and help them, and I did. And then they went around and then had a match point to go into the third round. Lost to Rinky Hijikata and David Pell, who ended up getting to the final. So it was kind of a tough loss, but it was a good week. And after that, they asked me to formally move forward with them and coach them. And so doing as many weeks as I can. And yeah, I had a good run at the U.S. Open. Some time before that. And
let me back up and have you talk about your connection to Ohio State, another JJ. Why don't you start there, how you got connected to Ohio State?
Well, I started coaching your son, Connor, after he finished his time at Ohio State. And through that, kind of last week, I was with Connor when we were in Cincinnati, or we were in Columbus. I met JJ when he was still just 15 years old. And then we did some initial filming while you were there as well. And then I ended up going back a month or two later and just started to work with JJ on a pretty consistent basis, actually, going back and forth, and then ended up doing some coaching with him on the Challenger Tour and, his first top 100 win in Cincinnati. And that was 2017, 2018. And then in 2019, I spent time with Mikhail Torpegaard on tour, coaching him, I think 3 out of the 4 Grand Slams that year. And then I've done work with Blas Rolla, who actually just reached out to me a couple of days ago to get advice for the player he's working with. And who else? I'm trying to think who else on that I spent a lot of time with. Yeah, different players, and I'm helping Alexander Bernard at the moment as well, and another kid, JP Day, who's on the team. So yeah, I'm kind of an unofficial sort of a assistant there at Ohio State, and just working with quite a few players over the years.
With JJ Wolf, there's film of that. I know people will mention to me if it's online. How would they find that? Like the serve work or any of the work you did with him?
I made a kind of just a little video for fun called Palm Down, which is really just comes from Vic, and that's on there somewhere, I think on the GreatBase Instagram. I always tell people I have terabytes of film. Those guys, of pretty much everybody that I work with, I film a lot, so document the development, but none of it's really out there online. Not too much of it.
I remember a story you told me about when you worked with my son Connor. I think it was Smith versus Smith. He got through JP Smith in a match, and he got $7,000, and he was just going, "I just won $7,000," and that's a little bit of a problem because you want to have people think that's not that big a paycheck. Of course, when you're
it might have been 7, but it was at least like 4. So we got to the semis or finals of a challenger there in Guadalajara. And like, man, I just
I remember one time he won both singles and doubles. And I said, "Hey, how much money did you win?" He said, $1,800. I said, "Oh, that's great. What'd you win for doubles?" He goes, "I wish you hadn't asked me that because it was a combination of what he won for both."
That was the combined. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think one is Ty Tucker. He what a great character coach. He gets all his players to be so fit, so ready, so competitive. Why don't you talk a little bit about Ohio State tennis?
Yeah, I mean, I was just there before Cincinnati, did some training there, and then after Cincinnati as well. And got to watch Ty do his work, and always enjoy it, and the intensity, and the guys hitting the ball at an intense level at each other. And so, I mean, all that kind of work obviously has helped these guys be able to transition onto the tour. And I could watch Ty work all day. It's, to me, really, really pretty fun to see him work.
For the old people listening, Sergeant Carter on Gomer Pyle, TV show from a long time ago. I know Dave was with the U.S. Open, but before Dave, you chime in with J.J. Wolf. What's his status now?
JJ's come back. He's been injured. He's back training again, and he's in Delray Beach. I've been sent a few clips of his serve, and he's looking good. So getting fit, doing a lot of track work, and hopefully we'll be back sometime soon. Got some kind of protected ranking, probably not crazy high, but I would guess in the 200s maybe, or maybe a little less than that. But
what's the best ranking he's at?
JJ?
Yeah.
I think he was in the 30s.
Wow.
At one point. I think 30, 39 or something like that.
I know a teammate of his, Peter Cobelt, who we've had a lot to do with over the years. And now he's the head coach at Nebraska, coaching the men. Kudos to Peter for his successes in tennis. But he said on our podcast that no one at Ohio State's ever hit a ball like J.J. Wolf. But I know you and Anderson got together at the U.S. Open, but the speed of J.J. Tracy. Yeah. Wow. But go ahead, Dave Anderson.
Yeah, Andy, I mean, hats off to you guys. It was fun. Even when we got back here, my wife and I were making sure we watched every minute of them. What unbelievable energy. And I enjoyed watching you guys do a practice session. And I mentioned to a couple of the coaches, could you comment on, I mean, these guys, and I when I saw you interacting with them in such a positive way, I thought it was a different vibe than I often see. Eyes were wide open. Both ears were ready to hear and listen. And there was a respect level that certainly reflected that they, number one, they were hungry. Number two, they almost looked like they were coming from another sport in a sense. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, both really good kids, good guys. I think even, the note that they sent me after Wimbledon to ask me to coach them was refreshing. Just the way they phrased everything and the way they asked me to coach them was not normal that I've experienced. And then, yeah, they're definitely hungry for the information, and they want to improve. And so, yeah, there's that respect, which is great. They're always going to have eye contact and listen to what I say and try to put it into practice, which is great. I mean, it's fun as a coach to be able to coach, to be able to do that, and have people be open to things and trying things. And
on the flip side of that, how much do they challenge?
Yeah, not too much, but I mean, I, like always, try to give good rationale behind everything I say. And then obviously with video to be able to show it. So for example, after they won their first round at Cincinnati against Casper Ruud and Martinez, and, the next morning I said, okay, here you go. And I had made from the video, I voiced over 3 or 4 clips or points in a critical way of, okay, here you got to work on this, and just send it to them, and they were really into it. So, as long as I think the rationale is there and the video is there to be able to show them, it's kind of common sense kind of stuff for the most part, So there hasn't been too much interference, which has been nice.
Yeah, you can sense that.
We can come back to that word interference, but Dave's comment, another sport. Heard my son Connor say often that, if someone were to just listen to Ty Tucker, they wouldn't think it was tennis practice. It sounds like he's coaching the linebackers.
Yeah, I mean, Ty's got, he cares, he's got passion.
Yeah.
And there's a sense of urgency there, which is great, as far as just, hey, we got to get this going, got to get it done now. But no, I mean, these guys have been really, really coachable, and, I try to keep things simple and not, throw tons of stuff at them, but certain areas and certain basic principles, like our whole theme, or my theme to them, has just been capture the net. There's so many of these teams that are still, as good as they are, they're getting stuck in one up, one back situations. And if you can just get the math right, where you're both at the net, good things are going to happen. Make your target bigger and make your opponent smaller. And then I always use Vic's line. I've been using that with them as well, is intimidation. When I say Vic Braden, you say tennis is about intimidation. So when you're up there at the net, you intimidate people, and then you cause them to have to come up with shots. So that was kind of the theme. It's like, hey, let's just capture the net whenever we can.
Along those lines, forever, Vic said his number one tip would be to get the racket below the ball, but later in life, so the number one tip that comes from that phrase, get in your opponent's head. That, like John Newcomb used to complain about Stan Smith looking so aloof, like he was never bothered. But because, with all Vic's brain search towards the end of his life, people make a decision in a different part of the brain.
Right. Always make your opponent think they're going to lose.
Yeah.
Was the tip, basically.
But with the interference, I was disappointed. I watched it like Dave and his wife watched it. Watched every point. It was so much fun. But yeah, I don't think it was really talk about capture the net. I don't think that the Tennis Channel or ESPN, the two boys, they didn't get enough love for their achievement. What do you think? The fans definitely loved it, but I don't think.
No, I don't know. I mean, I didn't really pay too much attention to it. You're just there in the moment, doing the work. So, another theme. This comes from Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a kind of marketing guru. But he has this line that I really like. I use it all the time. Is just stay in the dirt, and don't get caught and lost in the clouds. So that was kind of a secondary theme. Was like, hey, let's just stay in the dirt, keep doing what you're supposed to be doing, and focus on the next one. And that acronym WIN. What's important now? It's just like, okay, what do you got to do now? Okay, you got to recover, massage, stretch, whatever it may be. Make sure you're prepared for the next one. Will to prepare. So just trying to focus on the moment, They took that to heart. I remember Robert kind of mentioned that in one of the interviews. He said, Coach has been telling us just, don't get lost in clouds, just to stay in the dirt.
It was several years ago. Robert Cash was in Florida, and he was same place I was, and he was supposed to come and work on a serve, but he had no means of transportation. I said, that's no problem. We'll send someone to come and get you. Anyway, he never left his girlfriend. But I know I would say this, if I was around J.J. Tracy, I would start telling people, I taught this guy to run. He's got to be right up there to be one of the fastest guys out there. Did he play other sports?
Yeah, he played other sports growing up, but yeah, I think Ty has said he's probably the best athlete he's ever coached.
Wow.
He's quite an athlete, the way he moves. And I know he would like to give singles a go, but when they're in the position that they're in right now in doubles, it's tough to pass that up,
And which one is passing up medical school right now?
Robert. Yeah, Robert. And they came close, really, he said, in the NCAAs. If they hadn't won the NCAA doubles, I think they saved a few match points that, he probably would have been on his way to medical school. But,
wow.
They won it and then got the wild card to the Open and then won a round last year. And, that kind of got him going.
Now, coming back to interference, I think of Matt Clore with coaching someone like Mackenzie McDonald, and, the celebs like John McEnroe or Brad Gilbert coming up and telling him, it makes no sense for everybody to put in their own 2 cents. Are you all the Aussies coming up and talking to you while you're working with Kimberly Burrell. Did that happen? Did people come up and create that type of interference?
Not really. I mean, there's a few other coaches around, Ty and Justin around, but more just a supportive role. I think we were okay as far as that goes, but you never know as time goes on. They're top 40 now, I believe, and you just never know. People come out of the woodwork, and yeah. So hopefully there's some. I think the loyalty's there definitely.
How do you pronounce the name of the Spanish player? Granolers?
I think so. Yeah, Granolers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, comment on his serve. I mean, obviously he does some things well. He could do a lot of things better, but he's just cracking the corners at 130. That's just amazing.
Yeah, he's serving well. I mean, he's a pretty big guy. I mean, he's lean, but he's pretty tall when you're next to him. He's not small by any means, so he's serving from a tree a bit, and yeah, it's good with a forearm, that's for sure.
Yeah, they're close.
He's been fun to watch over the years, hasn't he?
Josh, yeah, I mean, good in singles and doubles.
Yeah, he has. Yeah,
he's that guy can just flat out play, and he's got a lot of experience. I mean, obviously
Andy, I had a question on a particular match, and I thought it showed a lot about both Cash and Tracy, but Tracy in particular, the Vavasori and Bolelli match where, they put themselves in a position to serve it out. And the Italians, obviously, one of the best teams in the world. And in that game that Tracy was trying to serve it out, and he had been really rolling through his serve games. And then the Italians just took a little Jamie Murray bunt lob over Cash at the net, and Tracy was back, and his forehand disappeared for 3 or 4 points, and next thing you know, they're in a tiebreaker. But the way they regrouped, did they talk to you about that moment, or did you discuss it afterwards? Because I thought it showed a lot of strength by those guys to be able to come back in that and win it after they were really in position to close it out and didn't get it done.
Yeah, we talked about it from the last time they played them as well, but because a similar thing happened. But after that match, for sure, it was just, and it was great that Robert could back me up. It was like, Jay, to just keep coming forward.
Yeah.
I think some of his college kind of habits, where he was able just to stay back and beat people with his forehand.
Yeah.
Especially as they were staying one up, one back. But so yeah, just, he stayed back and those guys got it over his head and made him hit forehands. And when they're both up there at the net as well, it's just going to get in your head. And so, yeah, we did talk about that. It's like, hey, you got to keep coming forward. And in fact, he kind of redeemed himself in the next match. I think it was against the French guys, where, he had, in the tiebreaker, it was close, and he came in and, had a tough low half volley and made it, and, forced those guys to come up with a lob, and they ended up winning that match point, which was pretty tight, but came in under pressure, and Robert's just saying the same thing. It's just like, hey, just, when you're up there, you're doing well, but you just got to keep coming. So yeah, we discussed it quite a bit, and that's the goal going forward. Obviously, he's not used to serving and volleying every time, and especially on the second serve, and so that's going to take some work, but working hard on his volleys just to make him a little more efficient, and so the confidence will grow. And obviously Robert's, great at the net. And so when JJ's serving pretty well, he usually can clean up, pretty easily, but you got to keep working on coming in. Yeah. Just trusting that and be willing to lose a few points in the meantime. But that's the message.
Cash to me seemed like the high school fullback, give him the ball and put his head down and go right up the middle. I remember Ron Woods. He was in charge of the UCA player development, first director, I think 1987. And he said, if you put a wheelbarrow full of money on the other side of a brick wall, Pete Sampras would take a few steps back and figure out, well, I can get over the wall this way. Where at that point in time, he said Jim Curry would just put his head down and run right through the wall. But did Cash have any football in his background?
I'm not sure, actually. We're definitely throwing the football around, but
yeah,
I'm not sure.
He just seems, courageous and strong, and so it was a good combo of watching them with the speed of Tracy and their chemistry. Though, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think they complement each other well. We did do some brain typing up to kind of confirm it with the need nuggles, but they definitely complement each other that way because they're a little bit opposite types.
You had Cash as an ENTJ?
Yeah, he is ENTJ, and then JJ is an INFP, but that could be off. But definitely JJ, more the risk taker, and Robert, in the Deuce court, just a little more solid, which is good. So that works out well.
With our listeners, if they want to go back to a previous podcast, Andy talks about brain typing. Also on our webpage, Vic Braid and Joel Trucker, there's a article, in-depth article that made it all the way to the cover of Tennis Magazine on brain typing.
Yeah, I mean, Robert's definitely wanting to, be a little bit of the coach out there, and JJ's a little more of a feeler, and so. We discussed that as well, just like how you manage that, just to not, to try to be a little more positive. And hey, and I think Robert's done a great job with that. As JJ's improving his net skills and, his positioning, and that's one of those doubles basics as he's learning to come forward more.
The ENTJ, for our listeners, that's the CEO that cannot not lead. Right. Years ago, Mr. Hopman, John Newcomb's an ENTJ, and he told Tony Roach, they were one of the best doubles teams ever. He told Roach, just let Newcomb think he's the captain. In other words, there's a lot to be said about that. Many times you don't want to put like two J's together. If you could put a J and a P, or don't put two I's together. It is good to have that mix.
Right. So, I mean, you've got one that's going to, just be a little more solid, and the one that's going to be more of a risk taker, and then one that can stay maybe a little more grounded, and the other one can pump the other one up. So it's a good mix.
Andy, David.
And obviously being teammates, being both American, it's, I actually talked to Raven Clausen a little bit, and he had watched them and said they've got a lot going for them and fun energy. And one of the biggest things is that there's some commitment, and they're both young guys, 23, 24, especially for doubles, but to be, to have somebody where you're committed to them and can go together for a while and improve. And so
go ahead, Tim.
That's another thing they've got going for them.
Tim's got a question.
Yeah. Andy and Dave, it seems like American college tennis has become such a good platform now to transition some of the top players to the pros, with schools like Ohio State and TCU, UCLA. Has there been anything that's changed over the past 10, 15, 20 years that has kind of enabled that?
I think just that, where I think more and more people are taking college tennis seriously as a route to the pros, so they're starting to notice, okay, this is a route we can take and go to school, get some maturity, get some time. And so I think that's helping in itself. It's one thing. So I think more players from internationally are going over to play college tennis. That's one thing I think that's probably helped.
I think one thing, before we came online, I was talking to Tim, and Ed Crass's name came up, one-on-one doubles. It's another podcast people could go back to. Ghost doubles, one-on-one, a deuce court to deuce court. If either player hits in the ad court, you lose the point. I remember asking my son, at the end of practice, just ask the guys at least play one game each serving of ghost doubles. And I said it on the podcast not too long ago that you can work on, you don't have to play doubles to work on doubles. I mean, you can incorporate doubles into your training, and it's fun. That's where it's. I do think that the numbers around 25% of the players in the top 100 in doubles played college tennis. It's been pretty much 1 out of 4. But at the future level and the challenger level, a lot of times there's no coach because they don't make enough money, which is sad. I know it's getting better. Doubles is kind of an afterthought. It's not like they're training for doubles on the tour. But I do think that's one great thing about college tennis, that the teams do train for that one point.
Right.
I liked it years ago when they played 3 doubles and they were all best of 3 sets and each match was worth a point, and they played to 9. First team to 5, not the first team to 4.
So each doubles match was worth the same as a singles match.
Yeah.
And that's not the case anymore.
No.
No, it keeps getting watered down too. The way it's played now is pretty fast.
Tell us a little about Raven for our listeners. He's been on our podcast a couple of times. It's a great story for us where he ran our dollar clinic. He was in the Wimbledon final, Australian Open final, but he ran our dollar clinic. He trained with us from, I guess, the age of 18 to 22 and a half. I mean, almost 5 years where he was. And he came in, made changes on every essential stroke, some greater than others, and we have it all documented. But tell us what he's doing something with the Indian Tennis Federation?
Yeah, so as far as I understand, he's doing some weeks with the Indian Tennis Federation. So he was there with Yuki Bambry, who also made it to the semifinals. So had they won and had our guys won, we would have played in the final. Of course, we would have won, but no, yeah, so I got to talk to Raven a couple different times, and that's always nice to talk to people in the system, so to speak.
I think with the Indian Tennis Federation, any federation, with, say, the services of Raven Klaassen, they need to put him also at the bottom of the triangle, not just with the players at the top of the triangle.
Yeah.
Help kids from the get-go learn how to serve and go forward and play. I mean, we always talk about just the ready position. Adam Bohr from New Jersey calls it the Jersey slant. You can tell the grip just by how people hang onto the racket. And if they're hanging on that racket with an extreme grip on the forehand side. I know my son, when TFO was very young, somebody couldn't play with my son, and one of the USTA reps came up, and TFO's at the same table and said, Connor, would you play with Francis? Connor goes, yeah, sure. And Francis just goes, I suck at doubles. And to go off on a tangent a little bit, last night watching the Davis Cup, Taylor Fritz has improved so much. He's his court coverage. But I would say, to use a Miran man line, he's a 16 from the baseline and he's an 8 at the net. 16 UTR only goes up to 16.5. And just from the service line in, he ventured up there a few times, but I was pulling for the U.S. and really late at night. Francis lost first set in 26 minutes, and I just watched the first game, and the racket was almost knocked out of his hand on the forehand side. I remember when Francis won the Orange Bowl at 15, I said, okay, now what they should do is take a year off and rebuild his game because he's proven himself to be a winner. Wow. I know a coach in Miami used to say about another coach is that that players should go see him first and see me second. Most people would have said just the opposite. And I said, why do you say that? Jim Richard, an intellectual sharp guy, said, because you got to get people really competitive first. Once they're really competitive and they can compete, then it's easy for them to change their strokes. Because we've taught a lot of people that have pretty strokes, but they can't compete. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, Andy, Cash Tracy, in 24, they got in and out of the challengers pretty well. And because, following and trying to help George as much as possible, Goldoff, and he had 2 wins over him 16 months ago. But they just scooted through that. And then I saw him here at the Dallas Open. I believe they beat actually Raman Krajicek here, if I'm not mistaken. But they rose pretty quick. And then you've been with them in a period where they're in new air for them, even at a higher level. But Have they ever spoke about their time kind of trying to get through? Because it seems so many of the doubles teams just can't get off the challenger that easily, the challenger level. Have they spoke about that period with you at all?
Not a whole lot. I think we talked about it briefly. But I just think that, the fact that they're good friends, that helps a lot. Just going out there and just knowing you can, there's no expectation, number one. And then you're not nervous to play with somebody, because a lot of those guys are playing with a different partner every week, right? And the challenge is just depending on where they can get in. And these guys are just, they're friends, and that really helps a lot. I mean, like Mike and Bob, playing together since they're 2 years old. And then how the brain works. If you get ticked off at your partner or give them a look, the signals from the brain to the muscles changes. So I think, expectations, the fact that they're friends and there's no real pressure, that helps a ton. And then I think once you start getting some wins, just the whole inner belief, starts to happen, where you just go, okay, like we can do this, we can beat these guys. And especially now, I feel like they feel like they can beat just about anybody, which I've told them as well. It's like, hey, you can, because a lot of these guys, the way they're playing, there's a hole there that you can take advantage of, but you've got to improve the skills to do it week in and week out.
George Goldoff, also on our podcast, great story. He played the U.S. Open. At one point, he had hung the rackets up, and he was with some players at a tournament. My understanding of the story is they needed a doubles partner, and he borrowed some rackets and won the tournament. But it's great. Is he 30 yet, Dave?
31, I think.
31.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should do this in the beginning. Give myself an F-. For our listeners, if it's the first time, Dave runs a very successful junior development program at the Brookhaven Country Club in Dallas, and George is based out of Brookhaven. When he's not traveling, he actually is still coaching for you some, right?
Yeah, we took him off the official roster, but we still call him Coach George, yeah.
Yeah, they had a tough first round. Those guys had to play Salisbury and Scupsy, who ended up making the final as well. So, but yeah, great experience. Talked to George a little bit while I was there as well. And
that's what I was going to ask as well. And Steve, you have background with the person I'm going to ask about, but I was watching a great first round of doubles up there. Number one, Cash and Glasspool, Julian Cash and Glasspool. Again, Glasspool, another college product at UT, who won NCAAs in 2015. And
wow.
And his roommate was actually Coach Adrian, who came down and visited your workshop, Steve, and they were roommates at UT. They were playing Galloway and
Hurler.
Yeah, there you go. What a first round! And Galloway and his partner knocked him off. And but I was going to ask about somebody who really just exclusively coaching out there, doubles only, and Louis Caillé, and thoughts on that, and because he seemed to be moving around multiple courts. I don't know, watching many different teams. Any thoughts on that? The success he's had. He's done a lot as a coach out on the doubles tour.
Yeah, French Canadian. He was in charge of what was called the action method back in the day. It's probably been 15 years where he's worked with the LTA and just exclusively worked in doubles. But he was a Fed coach, a Federation coach. So, like say Grant Connell, who grew up in Vancouver, and became with Glenn Michabata, who grew up in. So you go from British Columbia to Ontario. But so early in his career, certainly connected with those two young players. So that really helped him from a credibility standpoint. But way back when, he was at conferences specializing. His topic was doubles, and. So he works with all the British players, and it's very systematic. You can get online. Louis had certainly, it could go on and on. He's had some run-ins with people that we've trained from a technical standpoint back when he was, I'd say on the grassroots side, teaching fundamentals. But he'll say now that, which I think is very humble. He says, "I'm working with players." It's not like he's teaching people. And I think that's where Joe Public doesn't realize, certainly coaching is a relationship, and, to just specialize on doubles, it's not like he's, changing anybody's serve. It's not like he's, adjusting any grips, that type of thing. But no, I think one thing is the LTA, Louis, give him credit for that, but they specialize. They have someone who's, he's in charge of doubles. And there's a lot of respect, the players training together, traveling together. And, let's face it, 20% of the money goes to doubles, and you have to split it. So it's very difficult for doubles players to have coaches. And now with film, you can streamline matches and just build up a database. I think, being very aggressive, flexible, where, he's going to run that modified eye. Just think about how aggressive Jamie Murray is. Just the way he plays. There's no, at the top, players will offset, but, it's, I think that's one thing about changing the rackets. You get these players with Babolat rackets banging a ball at the tee, and years ago it was conventional doubles. It was to stand halfway between the center mark and the outside of the court, and you're going to just cover your half of the court. You're going to serve and volley. Then Gonzalez was the first one to serve from the tee, right from the center line on the baseline, so he could directly hit to a right-hander's backhand, start the point off in the Deuce court. But no, I just think teamwork, communication, making doubles more important. Doubles is not an afterthought. Some things I would say about Louis.
That's what I was wondering, is why, because at least as far as I know, we don't have a similar approach from our governing body in regard to the doubles.
No, on the tennis teaching side, I remember one time, actually someone who Dave would know, Frank Hornig, he's still in Montreal. He's a great technician. We tease Germans, in Ordnung, everything's in order. Andy living in Germany would know that. With Frank, he's my age. I was the instructor, and he became a student of ours, and he's been teaching tennis ever since. His connection into Montreal was through Danny Cooper. So he was wrongfully dismissed from a tennis club based on the way he taught. And people just misinterpreted the way he taught. They just didn't understand. But then the testimonials and the documentation that he had from his students, the film work. But I remember it wasn't directly with Louis, but it was with the action method, because Frank was opposed to the action method. I told Frank anytime, I said, because he said, I don't know when you'll have to testify. I said, just tell me. He goes, well, if I can't tell you, the flight will be very expensive. I said, just tell me. I will be there. I will testify. But they settled outside of court. No, it goes way back. I think of there's so many Canadians that trained to teach tennis where they had, I think, just 5 different levels of certification. Not by Louis, but by his assistant one time. I was told that I taught stereotypical strokes. And so the action method was very much like, say, the Balotelli method. It's just live ball. It was no static balance, no grip, no checkpoints. I can remember training Richard Hernandez, who was being tested by Louis, and Richard showed up with film of Pete Sampras from the age of 10 up, and approaching it really with strong tennis math, I would say. And I would say that with Louis, from a technical standpoint, way back when, not that it's totally a negative, but it's a point of contention, is that where's the math? Where's the math? I've been saying this story recently, had a group of players listen to Andy Roddick's podcast, which is great. But I said, let's listen till he says something that could be measured. And repeat myself, he said, well, Federer had a 6-inch return. And I just go, bingo, bingo, because there's just no numbers. But let me go back with the Davis Cup on TV yesterday. Austin Krajicek had a great day. I know he won the silver medal. I think Rahm is someone that everybody can learn from because he's so cool. I fed balls to Rahm when he was 14. I've never coached him for 2 seconds, but he was coached by one of our students, Craig Tiley. He played with Austin. He played with Brian Wilson. and he played with Raven Clausen. But if people go to our course, Home Practice, coming back to Ohio State, as Dave Anderson said, there's so many connections, and people don't make the connections, that Austin Krychak at lefty and a young Victor Lillo of a righty, they're going through, coming back to the Louis Caillé question, they do a stroke review at the end. And ironically, I read where Victor Lillo, who had signed a pro contract when he was really young, so the kid can't sign the pro contract, the parents can. So that contract can become null and void, and they can be reinstated as an amateur. But he's going to be a freshman in January at Ohio State. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the deuce court, ad court, Andy. How do you decide who plays deuce, who plays ad?
Well, they'd already had that set as far as Cash and Trace are concerned, but like I said before, the solid player in the deuce, and then the pressure goes to the server, and then JJ's a little bit more of a risk taker. I think it works well.
And what's up with those guys now? There's one was injured. JJ got injured at the end of the tournament, right?
Yeah, he had a little bit of a strain, oblique, and his shoulders, giving him trouble over the years. So I was a little blamed, but unfortunately, that last set, it took him pretty much out of it.
Is there a chance they could qualify for the end of the year tournament?
I'm not sure how the point, possibly. I think they're in the top 20 in the race, but we'll see how many points I need to get to get there, but they may have a chance. Yeah, they're in China now. They just got there today. So they're going to play a few tournaments there, and then I'll see them over here in Europe in mid-October. In the meantime, I'll do a lot of, they have routines to do and drills to do, and we'll do some work through video. So,
what are some of the routines they're doing? You showed me or you sent a film to me. I showed the kids here. I'm not sure if you filmed it at Cincinnati or filmed it at Flushing Meadows, where Robert Cash is hitting a beautiful one-handed backhand volley. What type of routines do you have them doing?
Yeah, that may be JJ. Yeah, shallow swing, volleys, serves, basic stuff. But, at the U.S. Open, we were doing 8 to be great, to start out a lot of practices, and then always just starting at the net with some, short compact swings and directionals and sets in the alley or rallying in the alley, ghost doubles, one bounce doubles, half court, straight ahead, mini tennis. Yeah. I made a decent list for him of drills I want him to do, but just basic stuff.
For our listeners, 8 to be great. There's actually a book called 8 to be great, and I should be able to rattle off all 8 keywords. It's an easy read, but trust is certainly one of them. Respect. You could take a shot at it and guess all 8 words, but again, a great read. For us, 8 to be great. It rhymes, gets the kids' attention, and give a drill a name, and you save time. Coming back to what you said about Ty Tucker's sense of urgency, like, let's get this thing going. So I always tell people, you don't remember juniors today. You don't remember Pete Sampras, but we look across the court and everyone looks like Pete Sampras. One player tosses underhand, tosses right into the player's racket. They jog back to the service line, so they're moving up and back, organize a split step. But they're just glide in to get that elbow raised on the forehand volley, for example, a long hitting zone, tracking motion. But my point to that is the kids don't make the connection. Sometimes we even do 8 to be great on a diagonal. So make the split step, moving diagonally. I do think most tennis players, when they go through training, they think, well, the coach likes this drill. It's just a time filler. When are we going to play? Like in basketball, when are we going to scrimmage, coach? They're not listening to any of the drills the basketball coach is going through. It's when are we going to scrimmage, coach? When can we play? When can we play? But yeah, 8 to be great. We do it sometimes. 9 to be fine, and it's just for these younger players who are hitting both a one-handed backhand volley and a two-handed backhand volley, they alternate. So it's forehand, next time it's two-handed backhand, next time it's the one-handed backhand volley. Then you get the teenage boys who go, I don't hit a two-handed backhand volley. You go, yeah, but you got a two-handed backhand return. So you have to be able to implement that movement for your return, like a volley with an added follow through, wall to the ball, steal the ace. Which actually, for our listeners, the first time someone's listening, is that the GreatBase is many things, but one, it's a language. It's a system of systems, and it's just information, homework from all these different coaches over the years. And of course, we have tennis intelligence applied. Over 100 coaches are mentioned in that 25-hour course, which is almost 20 years old. We need to tennis intelligence applied 2.0. A little more brevity, a little more clarity, a little more clarity. But on the deuce court, ad court, they both have two-handed backhands. Probably the toughest shot of is the deuce court, taking it inside out off the backhand side for a righty. And then for me, I think everybody, it should be on the Tennis Channel once a week. Yeah, you can comment on this. Vic Braden, it's called Go for a Winner. Go for a Winner. Mixed doubles is a fantastic adventure. But everything it said in that tape, it applies to doubles, not just mixed doubles. It's just story of circumstance. I ended up volunteering and showed it 10 times for the Boca Raton Tennis Association. And that's where I went from, Joe Public to like, okay, maybe I understand a little bit more. Then I thought Vic was just that little short, fat, funny guy, as he would say. And I just remember him saying the deuce court player will play more balls. And this is why, is that every point originates in the deuce court. So I'm sitting at the table with Tim. So he plays the deuce. He's taken 3 returns. I've taken 2. Tim returns again. He's taken 4. I'm still at 2. But also, for example, the kid who's either picking his nose or picking dandelions in Little League Baseball, they put him out in right field because they can't catch. And that's where very few people are going to be hitting the right field because of just the breakdown, how many people are right-handed, how many people are left-handed. It's about 85%. So very quickly, long story. So most people are mistaught the grip. They're taught a strong continental grip. So the right-hander with a really strong continental grip on the forehand side, the ball goes, the racket face is lined up to the deuce court. And then the same thing, the right-handers are running around their backhand. They're pulling horizontally on their forehand ground stroke, and the ball goes to the deuce court. So that's where Vic used to say that the macho male ego, the man will say, honey, I'm going to play the ad court. That's where all the big-time points are played. But Vic used to say, well, it's the deuce court player that makes the ad court player famous. It's someone that Dave and I know well. We spent a lot of time with. For me, I spent so much time. I've known Robbie Seguzo since he was 10. And with Ken Flack, he played that deuce court. And the way he could return serve with a one-handed backhand. Granted, he had to be on the other side serving, but he was ranked 1 in the world for 5 years. But why cash in the deuce court?
No, again,
you inherited that.
that's where they're comfortable. Yeah. But, we spend a lot of time with me serving from the service line or just behind it to his backhand and me just saying, make a wall with the racket face and then drive your left palm. And then just having JJ practice, poaching off that middle return or inside out return. I mean, we probably did that drill more than any other.
Boy, I tell you what, Andy, too, it's not to pat you on the back, but it showed because Cash literally, I mean, I had our kids watch it in the academy and I was commenting on it. I mean, it just, you could just feel himself. You could feel him tracking on that inside out. And I mean, you blink and he was on top of the net behind it.
Yeah, so, it was coming in.
Yeah.
So I think, for both of them, but it'd be interesting to Steve to measure, to do the stats on some of the doubles matches now when they're played no ad, fill the no ad scoring to see who would take more returns actually. Cause I think that might be different now depending, but it seems to be for a lot of people. I don't really think they go, hey, you're going to take the ads. It's kind of like who feels better in the moment, who's doing a little better at the time to who takes it, kind of who's feeling hot. It seems to be kind of the way rather than, hey, I'm going to do this, I think it's going to depend on who they're playing against, the matchup and who's returning well.
In junior tennis, we play no ad doubles. It's baffling to me that kids playing, they don't realize that the right-hander can slice the ball better off the deuce court where the lefty can do it to the ad court, and they don't even know that. One thing on a tabletop return, the racket, it's a linear pattern. It's like a volley with the added follow through. You're taking the racket across the ironing board. It's great for framework, the framework for building a house. But typically, the tabletop return in doubles, unless it's a really, really weak serve, because you're not imparting the topspin. I mean, you can. I mean, certainly catching the ball early, you can hit, let's say, modified mild topspin. It's not the violent spin per se, but it seems like your guys pulled that off where they played some tabletop returns, and what Dave said, they're just all over the net. Have you been working with them in the framework on just, I mean, when you have that shot, you can start to really build your game with, in relationship of strokes, in relationship of spins, playing from one zone to the next.
I don't really use the term tabletop really that often. I mean, even the flat, right, is from Vic Braden again is 17 degrees upward. So
yeah,
tabletop would be more for volleys. They're feeling that linear path, across an ironing board, but definitely just driving. Making a wall with the racket and driving. Robert's forehand, his left side pulls out a little bit. So, mirroring the hands, keeping your head still, palm to the target. That's been the simple phrase. For JJ, he can hit the ball really hard, especially on the forehand side. And, so I use the term a lot of times, Krispy Kreme, just go Krispy Kreme, make him look like a donut when he's got to look. And that, he can really hit that thing, but it can either go in or it can go through the back wall. So finding, a medium ground there is important, but yeah,
I think
you got to keep a low trajectory in doubles. And if you can get in, get in.
I think one thing with tabletop, you could take two juniors, for example, and say, okay, I want you to play. You only hit topspin on your serve. And granted, you have to swing up to hit flat because it's like the ball's doing forward somersaults, hits the court. The court puts more spin on the ball than the player. But if a kid has an extreme grip, that they don't have the option. The way they're hanging on the racket, they don't have the option to interrelate the strokes. I mean, it's just like the way your semi-Western grip. Coming back to making, like, say, a comment on Tiafoe last night. Wins the Orange Bowl at 15, I would say, hey, now, repeat myself, you've proved that you're a great competitor. Now let's get you in the corner with a technician and get that elbow lower on the serve, and how you hit a backhand volley, how you set up for a forehand. But that expression, well, the horse is out of the barn and winning is a drug. It's like, what do you mean? We're going to go backwards. But in other sports, they do that because people say the crystal ball on this is that you're going to get to the top of the mountain, but not to the peak. You get up, you won't get to the very top. You won't hit the apex, the highest point. Yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, exactly.
No, I mean, if I had to give a visual for what I saw with Cash's backhand inside out, it'd be like a Nike swoosh, and just that kind of racket path. But let me ask you a question on targets on the serve, Andy, because of you're being out there at that level, and doubles versus singles. I'm surprised more teams actually, when they have the heat to bring, don't attack players' forehand returns, which seem to be a little bit more crackable. The body being used a little bit more, but do you? Because in the singles, as you know, the stats all show. I mean, they're pretty much hitting the 2-foot quadrants on the sideline and the center serve line. And could you talk a little bit about the targets on the serve? I know it varies depending on the opponents and such, but do you think the top doubles teams out there are using the body serve much, and are they thinking about that kind of serve?
Yeah, I think the body serve a lot, actually. And probably the biggest target we talked about, again, just going with the math, to take away angle. But for example, against the Italian players, both one-handed backhands, anything you just kind of get up on their strike zone, they really struggled with.
Yeah.
And so they could hold, where the first time they played him, JJ, can really bring the heat on his serve. And I think the first serve he hit, maybe like right around 130, and Bolelli just creamed it for, basically a winner on like a body forehand. And then once they just started getting it up a little bit higher out of the strike zone, they had no problem, either finishing in the net or just holding serve. So that was the main thing against them, was just to make a high percentage of first serves and try to get it up, and then mix it every once in a while. I mean, I think the wide serve can work if it's done as a good change up, and again, depending on who you play, but just to play the math and not give people angle, that was more of the goal, so a lot of tee and body and then mix it up every once in a while. I mean, if I were to look at the stats, there's some times, where a second serve maybe went wide or, didn't go wide enough and they got burned on it. So, I think they're at a level where you can serve, 105, 110 around there and just make it good body or, tee big target, you're going to set up the person at the net to be able to clean up, in most cases, or you're going to come in and not have too challenging of a first volley. So,
Andy, what about stats? Do you sit down, do you go through the numbers with the guys after each match?
Not a whole lot of stats, but, video, like, I heard Dave mention it last week, I think kind of, and I've been made fun of it by some other coaches before, that I film everything. And that's just, from habit, maybe years around Vic, but, I just have my iPad out there and I'll just film every point. Yeah, and it's better than just standing back there with my arms crossed. But so, for example, the guys that I played first round, I had filmed we practiced with them and I had filmed every point. So then it was like going into the preparation for that match, I was like, well, I've got it all right here, a whole practice set. And so
I did mean it in a complimentary way, Andy.
Yeah, no. But there have been other coaches that, they're always filming, because I always have my GoPro or something out there.
Yeah.
I just film. So most of the time I just like to be able to show and tell, and, stats can tell a story, but if you can actually show them, positioning or show them different things or weaknesses on an opponent or patterns, for me, that's where it's at. I think most people are visual learners.
Well, I know
and
now
so to be able to,
it takes time. Of course, all these pro teams, even like ice hockey players are using an iPad on the bench. But say, for example, in a set, a kid misses 18 forehands, and you could just take it and then edit it, and they just see forehand 1, forehand 2,
right.
forehand 3, forehand 4.
Exactly.
And it's almost like hitting them over the head instead of, looking at a piece of paper.
Exactly. I think the stats, like I was talking to Matt Clore about it, what would be most helpful with Tennis Australia, they had reports, written by different coaches, but they would have reports on players. And that's, for me, what was even more important is more of grip swing body. Where does this player break down stroke wise? Because and Federer has said it before as well, it's like, you get these stats like, hey, they're going to have the tendency at 30 all to serve wide. But, every match is different. Every opponent's different, the situation. And then he's saying like, well, I know that he knows that I know that he's going to go down the, So I always take the stats, those kind of things, just kind of with a grain of salt, because I just feel like that can change quite a bit. I mean, definitely after a match, if you the stat of, like you just said, if I miss 14 forehands in the net, then okay, let's go work on that. So that's the kind of stat you want to know. But
then you can condense that down, and then you send it to a kid's telephone and say, watch this, 18 forehand set number 1. And then ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Let me ask you this about video. Is you can get online and watch every big-time singles match, which I've done. Rainy day, it's okay, let's watch this match. It's going to take us 28 minutes. And, maybe the match took 2.5 hours to play. But can you do that on YouTube? Could you watch, say, Cash and Tracy's match without any of the in-between point times? Just the point.
I'm not sure if the U.S. Open has put some of those up. It's possible that they would, but that's, again, through like a Dartfish service where they can cut out all that stuff.
Well, let me
just watch it. Or
let me back up on a few things. You mentioned Tennis Australia, so one of our longtime students, Craig Tiley, he's the CEO. He spent 7 years at small time Tyler Junior College, Tennis Tech. And
Yeah, I talked to Tap Tap while I was there.
so Tap with Tennis Europe. One time I spent 4 months with 14-year-olds in Tennis Europe. Every Australian match, when a kid went on the court, they have the Australian kid playing in Europe, getting on the red clay, it's the supers. I mean, the Americans listening is that if you could, I wouldn't be all hung up on, how you're ranked in the 14s in America, but try to get over to Europe. And you can do it where it's not anymore. It's not much more money. Every Aussie had a fitness trainer with them. Not like they had one trainer, but if there was a group of Aussies at a tournament, there was a fitness coach. So I don't know if our governing body is doing that, but it's very interesting. It's being in Europe to work with people from different federations where they absolutely have no money. But it's the big four with the four majors.
Yeah.
But Matt Clory mentioned his name. He works for the USTA, but he's somebody, you could listen to him on our podcast several times. His title is Senior Manager, Coach Education, Analytics. So people ask him for information, but then, do they have the skills to use that information? To actually go out and here's the information, but it's applied information. Like how can you make people make these changes? Go.
No, I was just going to say for me, I mean, the stats is all great to have that after, but for the players I'm working with or to scout opponents, it's just more of a grip, swing, body, to find holes in their game and then seeing what they can do and not do, and then how they play tactically, just positioning wise in doubles, so you just take those together and then you can make up some simple things to try to implement.
Let me say this, going back to Dave. I asked Dave one time years ago on these podcasts, what's your theme to improve American tennis? And Dave Anderson said, Back to the Future. Well, Don Leary wrote the book, The Teaching Pro, and he had the word picture method. So we can certainly take, Braden's information or Van Horn, all these coaches and say, okay, let's put it to pictures. Let's eliminate the verbiage and have a vision. So Dave just said the Nike swoosh. With that, years ago, people would get a Sunday newspaper, and here's a couple things that kids could do with the funnies, the cartoons. All the kids wanted that section of the paper. And one was the two pictures. It looked like they were identical pictures. But can you find 10 things that are different in these two pictures? So many good things have gone away. Another one was just a Sunday newspaper is you just go from 1 to 2 and you're creating a visual. You're painting by numbers basically, but you just do it with your pencil. So it's like, whoa, I just drew a horse by just following these numbers. But then another one was Sunday newspapers in the 70s in the US of A. There would be a tennis tip. It'd be a visual. The volley is a loaf of bread. The forehand's a candy cane. Now, Dave, years ago, I think it was through Tennis Tech, you did one of those for Tennis Magazine, right? It was in there once a month where you'd have a visual, and then you got selected for that?
Yeah, probably 89, 90, or 90, 91. Yeah.
What was your tip?
Yeah, it was through the USPTA, the people who won that award. It was check the time on your wristwatch for a more powerful serve, just to help people get the feeling of pronation. I had hair then, by the way, in the picture, so you may not recognize me.
It was a mullet.
It was a mullet.
Come on.
And when Andy Fitzell met Dave Anderson, he said, I thought Dave was going to be a lot taller, but that was just based on the size of his nose.
I actually think I did tell you that. I go, I thought you'd be taller.
I used to be 6'1". Now I'm not.
And Braden used to say, I was 6'3" and thin, and then I started coaching juniors. And I shouldn't have any hair jokes or nose jokes. Up here in the mountains, they could use my nose for a ski slope. Any closing thoughts, Andy, on Cash and Tracy? That sounds like it could be a TV series.
No, it was great, Ron. It was tough, I mean, I would like to win some slams, and to be that close, and then losing 3. It was it was tough. I mean, obviously the expectation was beyond probably what they had thought, but looking at the competition, I know there's a few teams that have a lot of experience, but the way that doubles is being played all the way to the top, guys getting caught up and one up, one back. It's like, I just know that if you can get up there and make a wall at the net, the chances of you winning the point are in your favor. And you just go back to all the greats, Mike and Bob being the last. It's what they did. And they both served well and could make a wall at the net. But I think these guys have a bright future, and hopefully I can keep helping them out and they can take a slam or two or three.
And that's not easy. With the Bryan brothers, it was great when they were inducted in the Hall of Fame. I think Bob Bryan is, being away from it for not 50,000 feet, but 50,000 miles is very, very positive. But what's going on with, I just think of the Bryan brothers, whether it's Braden Information or the drills that Tiriac and Nastasi used to do, just getting those guys together. I mean, I know scheduling is very difficult, but it would have been great to have Cash and Tracy just be there to practice with, if they could just have been there to practice with Rom and Krychek. So Rom obviously has so much wisdom to impart.
Sorry, just quickly, I was going to say, it wasn't Mason Vaughn out there with the team?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he got to make the trip. He enjoyed it. He made a lot of great observations that just about the whole experience and level of professionalism from some of the players in comparison to others, and so he's building his tennis IQ, I think, a little bit on how he wants to navigate for the future.
Yeah. For our listeners, Mason Vaughn, what is he, 15 now? Almost 16?
16. He is 16. August 20th.
And
day after mine.
He's been ranked as high as 1 in the U.S. Is that right? Or
yeah, I think so. I know he's made it to the finals of a few nationals and won 1 or 2. And I think he made. I don't know if he was ranked 1 or not. I know he was probably in number 1 in his recruiting class.
Yeah, it's really.
He's been in the top couple. Yeah,
it's really interesting with the telephone. I mean, I've done this with Andy. I could tell it was a little bit intense because Andy wasn't returning some of his text messages. I say Matt Clore, or not so much Raven, but Matt Clore and Andy would be texting them during the match, and they're texting me back. Yeah, the professionalism. Some of the players, they didn't show up on Sunday years ago. That they would have all been there. From you just can't show up late. Can't be great if you're late. But the money, Andy, I sent you a text and you said, I go, where are you staying? You're in the city. And he said, I'm coaching doubles player. I'm staying in a Matchbox on 43rd Street. Tell us a little bit about the money. How'd the guys do? And, can they afford you full time? I know you coach my son Connor for a peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah, you owe me big time.
Yeah, I'm putting jelly on it next time.
Oh, that's good. No, the guys did pretty well. I think they shared $250,000. And moving forward, I'll just try to spend as much time as I can with them. Obviously, they understand my situation, that I'm here in Germany, and so I'll try to do as many weeks with them as I can. And then when I'm not, I'm pretty conscientious about seeing how they're doing, and then watching film and having interaction that way, just going back and forth. And
you got your wife Leo and Theodore the cat. JJ Wolf, he should have been based in Germany. I mean, he's the ball striking, like you had him volleying so well, but to say, hey, we got to have you play mini tennis 3, which is basically, for our listeners, serving straight ahead, just touch tennis. And these guys aren't being, they're not going to stay in Columbus, I hope.
I don't know. They've got family there, and obviously the built-in kind of practice facilities and partners with Ohio State. But we'll see what they decide to do in the coming years. But I was just going to mention JJ's sister Danielle. She was actually hanging out with us for the first week or so, and she may start playing herself. I mean, she stays fit. She's a good athlete. She hits the ball pretty well. She was actually the first day. Robert wasn't there, and it was just JJ and I and Danielle was the hitting partner, and she hits the ball just about as hard as JJ does on the forehand side. But I gave her a lot of grief on some other things, and so she's working on her game as well.
I've met her before. I don't know her, but she went straight to the top in our world of grassroots tennis because she became a lead coach at a beautiful place in Chicago, Midtown Tennis. And tennis world's a small place, so I have students sent to me, and some people are taking lessons at Midtown Tennis. Tom Gullickson was working there at the time, and a lot of people just don't slow it down and grind out the technique, but. I know it's obviously Ty doesn't need it. I mean, hats off to Ty Tucker. He goes to work every day and walks into a $20 million building with his name on it. Yeah, I just don't think a college. If you go to Columbus and you're a college student, go to beautiful Dusseldorf and do mini tennis 3 with Andy. I mean, I
think the guys. Obviously, Robert has a long time girlfriend that. They'll probably end up getting married, but I mean, so he's got that there. I think JJ, if he's home for more than a few days, he gets pretty restless. So I think he wouldn't mind, being out, but.
Oh, and I know that what Ty does with those players is fantastic. I mean, it's like when Jim Lair says about Dennis Vandermeer, he goes, you need to watch him work. I would say that about Ty Tucker. You need to watch his practices.
Yeah,
but the players that take the redshirt year, they would be best to have a different type of practice. That's where they need to take care of the holes in their game, and then jump into the boot camp.
Yeah,
100%. We're not slowing down for anything. Let's go with Tim. You want to sign off with a question, and we'll go with Dave, and we'll say goodbye here.
Question? Sure, Dave and Andy. If I recall, JJ Wolf's kind of built like a football player. Is there something to be said about?
He definitely has my quads, it's for sure.
I was just wondering, is there something to be said about that type of build and fitness that other players could emulate, or could it become a hindrance to some players?
Well, gosh, I think the players are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That's one thing. JJ. He inherited more of his mom's genetics. He's got strong legs, but his dad is like 6'4", and JJ is about 6 foot at best. So he wishes he had some of that. But no, I mean, to be able to produce force off of the ground, you got to have strong legs. He's definitely got that, and Danielle as well. So yeah, you've got to have strong legs. You got to be able to move. But I don't think you want to be to the point where you're sluggish or it hampers your mobility. You look at like the Sinner and the Alcaraz. I mean, they're both strong. I've seen Sinner with his shirt off. His back is pretty ripped, but he's pretty slight otherwise.
JJ Wolf, I know you've did some camps with me in Cincinnati. The Tennis Hall of Fame, the Cincinnati Tennis Hall of Fame. There's a lot of Wolves in that Cincinnati Tennis Hall of Fame.
The whole family has athletes.
They're a very, very talented group of people. But I think also too that I was around JJ Wolf enough to know that he's a pretty cool dude. He can hang out with a 4-year-old or an 84-year-old, but just get away from not to say they're partying, but it's just like less is more. The book Amazing Racers, Stoic and Spartan. Biblical teaching, the less you have, the more you have. And but no, the coach, the golden rule is he who has the gold rule. So I mean, those guys, they want to do really well, they should camp out in Dusseldorf. And we'll
see. Hopefully this fall they'll get to come over here and check things out and
bring the girlfriend. Bring the girlfriend with you. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I mean, it Andy. Again, congrats. It was to you and them, and it was a blast. I felt like college tennis and the incredible atmosphere at a major school like they played at probably prepared them well for the courts that they played on, because I know they played on, I think I watched them on 10 or 11 a couple times, and I think they finished on 17 and then some, to Armstrong. And but those outer courts, I bet to them that was just an Ohio State tennis match, and it looked like a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun for us to watch it.
No, yeah, thanks. No, it definitely had fun and learned a lot, and hope to come back and take it a couple steps next year.
No, Tim, great to have you visit. It's going to be a fun week helping you with your tennis teaching. Dave always helping us with the podcast. Yeah. Andy from Germany.
Yeah, hopefully listeners got something out of this.
What do you say, Andy? Did we give them any value? Andy is actually the founder of the GreatBase Tennis podcast. It was his idea. And then when your wife, her parents are a little bit older, and you tell me you have to go back to Germany, and that's understood, no problem. And I said, what about the podcast? And you said, got to keep doing it once a week. I go, once a week,
that's nothing.
No problem.
Easy peasy.
Yeah. We got to find time to become, get away from amateur hour, but you guys are helping us be more professional. But everybody, thank you very much. I hope we say,
thanks guys for getting on the line. Yeah, appreciate it.
Tennis nuggets for the treasure chest. All right, we'll do it again. Adios,
okay.
amigos.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Yeah.
All right.
Tim, thanks.
Thank you. Great to see you.
Take care.
Bye.
All right, Tim, another one in the books. Thanks for being part of it.
Thank you. That was awesome. Surprise.